LeBron versus Michael. When did LeBron pass Kobe? 5-4. Wait, hey, you guys are putting him against Michael. When did he pass Kobe?
Doing this at age 39, year 21 seemed impossible. So the idea that he wouldn't still be a really good player at 42 in year 24, like, I just don't think he'll ever be bad.
And expose Nick Wright like I've never exposed Nick Wright before. And to tell you the truth, he's going to help me with it.
Hating on LeBron to call him the second greatest player ever. Yes, we all know he's the second greatest player ever, but he's no Michael.
Nick Wright unintentionally ends up hurting LeBron's legacy while trying to compliment Michael Jordan. And the moment fans heard it, they recognized the contradiction immediately. This was not another case of viewers stretching someone's comments or taking them out of context. Everything came directly from Nick himself, which is exactly why his statement resonated so strongly.
Let's just not have the argument anymore. They're both great. Let's just agree to disagree. That's happening. And the other thing that started with the Steph conversation is, you know what? Everybody's a GOAT. Steph's a GOAT. Kobe's a GOAT. LeBron's a GOAT. Kareem's a GOAT. Michael's a GOAT. They're all GOATs. They know they've lost the argument.
What made this moment even more unbelievable was that Nick wasn't initially trying to compare Michael Jordan and LeBron James directly. Instead, he was making a broader point about today's NBA. He focused on load management, star players resting during the regular season, and how the league has gradually lost some of the excitement that once defined it. At first glance, it sounded like a familiar basketball opinion. Many fans and analysts have expressed the same concerns. Supporters are frustrated when they spend money on tickets only to discover that the biggest stars aren't even playing. Commentators criticize the issue regularly. So in the beginning, it seemed like Nick was simply doing what he always does, delivering a bold opinion with confidence. Then he mentioned a story involving Michael Jordan, and from that moment, the entire conversation took a different turn.
Doing this at age 39, year 21 seemed impossible. So the idea that he wouldn't still be a really good player at 42 in year 24, like, I just don't think he'll ever be bad.
And expose Nick Wright like I've never exposed Nick Wright before. And to tell you the truth, he's going to help me with it.
Nick then began sharing a personal memory from his childhood, recalling how his mother took him to New York to watch Michael Jordan face the Knicks in the final game of the regular season. That detail is important because this wasn't a legendary playoff showdown. It wasn't Game 7. It wasn't a high-pressure matchup with playoff implications. According to Nick's own story, the standings had already been decided. The Knicks had secured their position. The Bulls had done the same. From a postseason perspective, the game carried almost no significance. Yet Michael Jordan still logged heavy minutes. Patrick Ewing also stayed on the floor for major minutes. For Nick, that experience meant everything. It became one of the memories that fueled his love for basketball. And that's exactly where his argument took an unexpected turn. The moment you tell a story like that, you're no longer talking about a single regular season game. You're establishing a benchmark. You're showing your audience what you believe true greatness looks like. You're saying that even when the standings make the game feel unimportant, the greatest players still suit up, still compete, and still give fans a performance worth remembering. Once you define that standard so clearly, you can't decide how people will apply it. You've handed them a measuring stick, and many instantly realized where that comparison would lead. Here's what many people overlooked. Nick wasn't only complimenting Michael Jordan. He was celebrating an entire philosophy. He was praising the belief that legendary players don't take nights off simply because the stakes aren't high. He highlighted the idea that every game matters, every fan matters, and the level of commitment should never change. It's a powerful message when discussing Jordan. But if you've spent years publicly defending LeBron James more than almost anyone else in sports media, that same standard becomes difficult to ignore. Because if LeBron doesn't consistently live up to the benchmark you've just described, then you've created a serious contradiction.
No, he played 5.
Without it?
Yeah, I count the whole career. The whole career.
Even
silly me.
But one, he was hurt when he came back
count
the
the whole
second
career.
year.
The whole career.
Okay.
He wasn't hurt in the playoffs when he got his ass swept.
This is where the discussion becomes much more complicated. Because as remarkable as LeBron James' career has been, it hasn't always followed the same blueprint Nick had just praised. Throughout the years, especially toward the end of seasons, when playoff positions were already settled or teams chose to be extra careful, LeBron's approach was often different. At times, he sat out the final regular season game altogether. Other times, he played only limited minutes. Sometimes it was labeled as rest. Other times, it was about managing fatigue and preserving his body. In some cases, it was simply viewed as the best long-term decision. Whatever explanation you prefer, the reality remains unchanged. The path LeBron followed isn't identical to the one Nick highlighted in his story about Michael Jordan. To be fair, that doesn't automatically mean LeBron's approach was the wrong one. That's an important distinction. This isn't about denying the value of managing a player's health. Clearly, it matters. Today's NBA is older, more analytical, and far more focused on protecting players over the long haul than it was decades ago. Teams prioritize health. Superstars take better care of their bodies. The league understands the physical demands of an 82-game season differently now. Those are legitimate changes. But the real issue isn't whether resting players is always good or always bad. The bigger question is consistency. If Nick believes the modern NBA has lost something because stars miss games and fans are left disappointed, that's a position he's free to take. However, if that argument is part of your message, while you've also built a public reputation for defending LeBron whenever he's criticized, people are naturally going to ask whether the same standard applies to him as well. This is where many commentators make a critical mistake. They assume fans only pay attention to the final conclusion. In reality, they notice the underlying principle. They hear the standard you're creating beneath your argument. That's exactly what happened with Nick in this case. He became so focused on explaining why today's NBA feels less competitive, less passionate, and more driven by caution that he overlooked what his own example actually implied. The moment he praised Michael Jordan for playing significant minutes in a game with no playoff implications, he was indirectly criticizing every superstar who chose not to do the same. And LeBron isn't automatically exempt from that comparison, simply because Nick has often defended him. The reason the clip spread across social media so quickly was because the logic was easy to follow. There were no complicated statistics or advanced analytics involved. It came down to a straightforward argument. Nick criticized stars for sitting out games that didn't affect the standings. He praised Jordan for doing the opposite, saying it was part of what made him special. LeBron, throughout his career, hasn't always taken that same approach. So if Jordan deserves praise for it, people naturally wondered how that same standard should apply to LeBron. That's not necessarily trolling or hating. It's simply following Nick's own reasoning to its logical conclusion. Once fans did that, they began noticing the inconsistency. Nick has spent years defending LeBron in GOAT debates. So many viewers already examine his comments for possible bias. That's simply the environment surrounding these discussions. So when he unintentionally gave Jordan supporters a powerful argument, they wasted no time using it. They replayed the clip, pointed to the contradiction, and argued that the same analyst who often warns against romanticizing Jordan's era had just shared a story that did exactly that. His memory painted Jordan as committed, dependable, and willing to compete, even when there was nothing meaningful left to gain in the standings. Here's the part that often gets overlooked. Nick's story wasn't just about Jordan logging heavy minutes. It was about the emotional connection sports create. His point wasn't simply that Jordan played nearly an entire game. It was that he was a young fan in the arena, and that experience stayed with him forever. That's important because fans rarely fall in love with sports through efficiency ratings or advanced metrics. They fall in love through unforgettable moments. They remember seeing the superstar they came to watch actually step onto the court. They remember believing the game mattered because the players treated it that way. Without realizing it, Nick tapped into that emotion, and in doing so, strengthened Jordan's side of the legacy debate. Look at it from a fan's perspective. A child goes to a regular season game where the standings are already decided. The outcome changes nothing. Yet the biggest stars still play, and that memory lasts a lifetime. That's the kind of story people treasure when they talk about why sports once felt different. Now compare that to the opposite experience. A family spends money on tickets, brings their child to the arena, and discovers the superstar is sitting on the bench in street clothes. That's the emotional contrast Nick unintentionally created. He presented both sides of the argument without meaning to. One side represented Jordan's era. The other represented today's NBA. And no player has symbolized the modern era more than LeBron James. That's where the conversation becomes even more sensitive. Once the discussion shifts in that direction, it stops being only about championships, statistics, or awards. It becomes a debate about commitment, availability, respect for the regular season, and the experience fans expect when they buy a ticket. Those are the kinds of topics that quickly influence legacy discussions. Because greatness isn't judged only by accomplishments. It's also shaped by how a player's career is remembered by those who watched it unfold. Jordan has long carried the reputation of giving fans the full experience every time he stepped on the court. LeBron, whether fairly or unfairly, has often been viewed as more strategic, more focused on preserving himself for the bigger picture. That perception existed long before Nick shared this story. That's one reason the clip gained so much attention so quickly. Jordan supporters have argued for years that one of his defining qualities was treating every game as important. LeBron supporters typically respond that basketball has changed. They point to sports science, workload management, career longevity, and the importance of protecting players over an 82-game season. That debate has existed for years. What Nick unintentionally did was give one side an emotional, easy-to-understand example that strengthened its position.
And expose Nick Wright like I've never exposed Nick Wright before. And to tell you the truth, he's going to help me with it.
The situation became even more uncomfortable because Nick used the story to criticize the NBA itself. He suggested the league damages its own product when star players miss games fans expected them to play. That's a significant criticism. It implies the fan experience suffers, the league's reputation takes a hit, and future generations may struggle to build the same emotional connection with the sport. If that's truly the standard being applied, then many viewers naturally ask, why LeBron wouldn't be included in that conversation after being the league's biggest star for nearly 2 decades? That's the deeper point many people focused on. It's not simply that LeBron rested during certain games. It's that he became one of the defining figures of the era Nick was criticizing. Superstars influence the culture of every league. Young players often follow the example set by the biggest names. Teams build strategies around their franchise players. Over time, the habits of elite stars help shape the direction of the sport itself. So if the argument is that the NBA developed a culture where resting became normal, many believe it's impossible to discuss that evolution without acknowledging the role of the era's most recognizable players. That's where critics believe the contradiction becomes difficult to ignore. Here's another point many people missed. Nick appeared to separate LeBron from the broader issues facing the modern NBA, but his own Jordan story made that separation much harder. The instant he praised Jordan for playing major minutes in a meaningless regular season game, he invited fans to compare that approach with LeBron's choices in similar situations. The moment you open a direct comparison between Jordan and LeBron, every detail is examined closely. Fans are deeply invested in that debate, and many are quick to point out what they see as double standards. That's why so many people claimed Nick exposed his own argument. Not because he admitted LeBron wasn't an all-time great. He never said that. Not because he suddenly switched sides in the GOAT debate. He didn't. The criticism centered on the consistency of his reasoning. Many viewers felt he applied one standard when discussing the league in general, but a different one when conversations involved LeBron. That's the kind of inconsistency fans tend to notice most. People can accept disagreements. They can even recognize personal preferences. What often frustrates them is when the same principle appears to change depending on which player is being discussed. Ultimately, legacy isn't built only through championships or iconic performances. It's also shaped by the smaller habits people remember over time. Did the superstar show up? Did they compete? Did they make fans feel that every ticket was worth buying? That's why this clip resonated with so many people. It wasn't really about one regular season game. It reflected something much larger: the way fans build lasting stories and lasting myths around the greatest players in basketball history.